Hello, today I wanted to talk about the Tzeentch battle traits I talked about today. I don't have a ton of time. This is my second try at this, so I'm going to try to get this in one go. So they showed off about two important army rules for Tzeentch. I think there's a little bit more for them to show us later, but let's just quickly go through this. This is all just um, lore and explaining some stuff, but we'll just get to the main business of it all, which is being explained here as well. So the main ability, perfect name, all part of a plan. When you lose a priority roll, if your spell gets unbound, or if you miscast, or if a friendly Argent Shard is destroyed, which is the faction terrain, you get a fate point. And there's no cap to fate points, it looks like, but we will quickly jump into what fate points can do. So Destined to Serve, Destines for Battle, and Destined Arcana are three ways we can spend it. There are more ways, but as far as our battle traits go, these three are what's mentioned. So Destined to Serve, before allocating damage to a friendly Disciples of Tzeentch unit, you can spend any number of fate points. For each fate point you spend, remove one damage in that unit's damage pool. So, important note is when you have allocation to be dealt to your unit, that is when you roll ward saves. So this has to be before you make ward saves. So this is better and worse than Destiny dice that we had before, and I also just think it's much more interesting than Destiny dice. Destiny dice was able to secure guaranteeing us saves and stuff, but it was pretty situational because our saves are atrocious in Tzeentch, so you needed a lot of 5s and 6s to even consider it. But what's interesting about this is, like, you can still make your saves and see how much damage you take, and maybe keep your unit alive at 1 HP, which is super important in Tzeentch. If you've played Tzeentch, you know that leaving stuff at 1 health is so bonkers. It can really, like, for battle tactics, taking objectives, sometimes they just need to get one more model or this hero off the table, and this can stop that. Destined for Battle is spend one or more fate points, and you add that number or value you spent into the charge roll for that charge. It's a reaction. So you roll your 2d6, and then you can decide how many fate points you're going to spend into it. So this is, like, actually really cool. And the reason being is because we probably just became one of the best factions for countercharging, and charging just in general in a way. Now, fate points are pretty rare to generate, so it's pretty hard to say that you're going to be able to consistently even do these things. I would probably guess you're going to get consistently 1 to 4 fate points in a battle round between the two turns. And so it will accumulate within over the game, but it's, how often you're going to be able to use all this? Maybe once or twice, but it's still very important and still such a cool play and such an important play in Tzeentch to either keep a hero alive or make the crazy roll that you needed to secure something, take an objective, kill a unit they didn't expect you to kill because you made a crazy charge, etc. So what's hilarious about this is a lot of the times that you might be, like, so far away from your opponent, so you're like, like, if Kairos makes this 12-inch charge, maybe I'll put him in combat. So you can roll all these, like, optional charges for your units, but let's say your Zangors got boxcars, and the closest unit to them was 15 inches away, and you can just spend 3 fate points, and all of a sudden you make a 15-inch charge, and there you are. Super cool. It's such a cool ability. They don't explain how Destined Arcana works. It might work the exact same way as these two. We don't know. So maybe it's spend 1 or more fate points to add that many, add that much to your casting roll. We'll see. So a further prismatic new feather in Tzeentch's cap is the ability to grant his followers illusionary powers. This is going to be Tzeentch's most important rule. The one we talked about before was the secondary rule, believe it or not. So by weaving Eldritch Illusions, up to 3 non-monster units on the battlefield can be removed and put into reserve, masked by illusion. They have to be Tzeentch units. Unlike normal reserves, these are only destroyed at the end of the 5th battle round, giving you some more time to plan out last-minute substitutions. And then in the near endless game of Smoke and Mirrors, which is the second part of this ability, you can swap out one unit currently in the battlefield with one that is currently masked in illusions. If a God Summoner is about to get perforated by some free guild fusiliers or immediately flattened by a maw grunter, you can switch them up with something more expendable. So I don't know if that means Gaunt Summoner has an ability to be able to be swapped out before something like that, maybe from being shot or whatever else. I assume it just means from the ability I'm about to go into detail below. We will see. They also mentioned if you manage to fly some Screamers of Tzeentch across the board to a crucial objective, you can then clog it up by warping in a whole unit of pink horrors and watch your foe try and shift a gibbering mess of divisible demons. I don't know if that means pinks have a different war scroll now. I don't know if that means Screamers have a different war scroll now. We'll have to see. So let's get into what the abilities do. So you pick up the 3 non-monster Disciples of Tzeentch units on the battlefield to be the targets. Remove them from the battlefield and set them up in reserve, masked by illusion. Friendly units that are masked by illusion are destroyed at the end of a 5th battle round and not at the start of a 4th battle round, like every other faction in the game, because we're cheating, because we're Tzeentch. Embrace it. Really funny. Tzeentch is usually playing for the long game anyway. This just lets us double down doing that. So when can we deploy these? It doesn't go in super detail on the amount of ways we can do it, but it does tell us one way we can. So Smoke and Mirrors, once per turn, army, any hero phase. Pick a non-monster Disciples of Tzeentch unit that was not set up using this ability in the previous turn to be the target. Then pick a friendly unit masked by illusion that's up in the sky and deep strike to be the substitute. You go and grab the substitute and you put it wholly within 6 inches of the target and not in combat. Then you remove the target from the battlefield and set it up in reserve, masked by illusion. So you pretty much swap places with what was in reserve and what was on the table. Now, you can pick a unit that was in combat. You just can't put the new unit in combat. This is insane. This is really strong. So if you have a wizard that's like struggling to survive, you spent fate points to keep him alive. Now you got to the hero phase. Now you can pull him out and replace him with 20 Zangors 3 inches away, ready to charge and mess up your opponent. It's hilarious. Maybe you swap him out with a Chaos Spawn. Maybe you swap him out with Screamers. Whatever you got in reserve. So this is fantastic. You just have to be careful because if you go, for example, the 20 Zangors, you kill the unit, your Zangors can't be picked up in the next hero phase because they were set up using this ability, and this ability specifies they can't be chosen as a target if they were put down last turn. So whatever you put down will have to stay down for 2 turns. So this is an amazing ability. It's honestly so incredible, and there's so much depth to it. I will give a few examples. So one example is let's say you're playing Enlightened on disc. You go over and you charge a unit, cripple the unit, and then you power through on objective, take the objective, and then on the next hero phase, before they can punish your Enlightened on disc, you swap them out with a Chaos Spawn that you had in reserve from the start of the game. Super annoying. Maybe you had 20 block of Zangors or 20 block of blues or pinks in reserve, and now you swap them out. And now your opponent is like, ugh, do I really want to go deal with that? Or do I want to go somewhere else? It's honestly hilarious. The fact that you can substitute the unit up within wholly within 6 inches of the target and not in combat means you can get really dangerously close to your opponents and make a really easy charge roll. You could probably, if we have a teleport spell, or maybe the changeling starts on the other side of a battle, you can like turn 1 just throw units at people. I mean, we're Tzeentch, we don't really hit that hard, but we do lock people up for a while. And if there's anything this ability can do, it is lock people up. It's actually kind of hilarious. I didn't even think about that. You can really just tie someone up forever as long as you have the right units for it, but we'll have to see. It's so funny. This ability is so strong. There's other examples too, like if you fly your Screamer up the battle, maybe first turn, goes to the enemy turn, they're done with casting their spells, they ask you if you want to do something, you're like, yeah, I want to do something. You use this ability, pick up the Screamer, maybe put down like a wizard, and have your wizard cast Soul Snare Shackles, or some other ability that he has that can only be used within a certain range, but because your Screamers move so fast, they put your wizard that was up in reserve on the battlefield to maybe do some disruption. It's really cool. There's a lot you can do with this. This is really sweet. And this also could just help set up a wizard for the next following turn. Now he's in range for all his spells, etc., etc. Super cool. There is so much you can do with this. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So we'll go on to the Tzeentch cast, or Fate Master. In the tapestry of shimmering deceptions, shifting fates arrives the Fate Master. Handy enough in a fight with 4 attacks, Rend 2, damage 2 attacks. They are also an expert strategist working to further Tzeentch's goal via the Arcanite cults. Their schemes are often longing in the planning, which is his ability, and cost 2 fate points. And act as wheels long set in motion turn and allows the Fate Master to nominate a nearby Arcanite and whisk them away into reserve when an enemy unit charges near them. So let's talk about what they're talking about. So in his War Scroll, it looks like War Scrolls will have, some of them will have a destined amount of points you can spend to activate an ability they have. So his is once per turn army, enemy hero phase. I was mentioning before in my other video that you might only want one of this guy because his ability is likely once per turn army. So if you have 5 of these guys, only one of them is going to be legally allowed to use their ability in the enemy turn. Only one of them, because of this army word right here. If it didn't say army right here, you could have all your Fate Masters activate this ability. So you spend 2 fate points, pick a visible friendly Arcanite unit wholly within 12 inches of this to be the target. So pretty good range. It's okay. It's all right range. And then for the rest of the turn, the first time an enemy ends a charge within 3 inches of the target, you can remove the target from the battlefield, set it up in reserve, masked by illusion. This is really cool. So the main use of this ability, I will say, besides like you're afraid of something dying in melee, and you pretty much guarantee that your opponent can't kill it with melee. They have to kill it with shooting or something else. I mean, shooting really is the only way, probably. So if they were to charge that unit, at least they get something out of it. They did move their unit. But you likely use this on a unit that was on an objective, and you want your opponent to take the objective, maybe because you want to now punish them with numerous amounts of units that charge that objective, but also you want them to take objectives because that's how we get fate points. So now you got the objective and they came to take it from you. You pick up the unit to safety and voila, nothing really happened. So what's really cool is that it talks about that the Fate Master can deploy from reserves with a bound retini? I'm not really sure actually how to pronounce that, but it's also masked by illusion. So I don't know if this is an ability that he has or a never battle trait ability that they didn't go over, but it's interesting because they make it sound like that he is allowed to teleport in with a never unit that's masked by illusion, providing them with some extra muscle when they decide to make their presence known. So that's pretty much all they give us in this community post, but it is a lot. There's so much. I do think the Fate Master is pretty good. His ability is probably justified on the cost. I mean, if your opponents know that they can't kill a unit if they charge it, you know, that gives them a lot of info to work with, because this is going to happen at the end of their hero phase. So it gives them options to think about, but if they have to do something, like take an objective from you, they might be forced to charge your unit. So we'll have to see how impactful this guy ends up being. I think he's really cool. But we'll have to see. I'm really not sure. I think he's solid. I do think he's solid, but I'm not really sure. I do actually love the model, and I will definitely be playing him. He's too cool of an ability not to use. But if he's able to deploy from reserve with another unit, with whatever this ability is, that is also really cool. He can also be like further backup to taking down an enemy unit. Because I'll be real, if you're playing Tzeentch, you need a lot more than one unit to really take down an enemy unit. because we don't do a ton of damage. Usually our damage is over time, a handful of turns, etc. I like to joke that Tzeentch doesn't believe in combat. But I will go over like another really cool example of all of this tied up to one thing. So like if you run up the battlefield with Screamers of Tzeentch, and then on your enemy turn, maybe you have one fate point already. You have one fate point. Maybe you lost the priority roll for the start of a game for picking deployments. So maybe you have one fate point already, and you go first. Your opponent makes you go first, and you send your Screamer unit up the battlefield, like I said a moment ago. And on the enemy hero phase, they're like, all right, cool. I cast my spells. Would you like to do anything, Tzeentch player? And you're like, yes, I would. There's a lot I like to do. And so you teleport the Screamers out into reserve, maybe drop down a wizard that you had in reserve, and you cast, let's say, Soul Snare Shackles. And let's say you cast it pretty low. Let's say you only cast it on a 6, which is exactly what you need to cast that spell. Shackles can be a pretty frustrating spell to deal with, so your opponent might be like, yeah, I think I'll have to counter that because that's really good. But if you're already at one fate point, for example, in this example, if your opponent counters it, you now have a second fate point, and that will now open up the Fate Master, for example. And let's say during your first turn, you did take an objective, and now you're like, well, because Shackles didn't work, now my Fate Master works. And you know why? It's because it was truly all part of a plan. Super cool. Super cool. I know I went down like a little bit of a rant there, or rambling, truly, but man, this is all so cool. I hope that this was pretty insightful. There's so many things you can do with all of this. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about. Have a good day.